Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. In this video, I'm going to talk about managed identities, right? So what are the managed identities within Azure and Microsoft Entra ID, right? And basically, these managed identities would be used within Azure and Azure resources and Azure services to integrate. So in simple terms and in simple language, it is Azure managed identities are the enablers for Azure services to authenticate to other Azure services or resources securely and without embedding credentials within code, right? And there are two types of managed identities that we can use and create and use for different requirements. One is with system assigned and another is user assigned, right? So I'll talk about both of those one by one and also give you a definition and then features and few of the examples with use cases, right? And I'll at towards the end of this video, I'll show you how we can create those as well, right? So let's talk about the system assigned managed identity, right? So what is it? In simple terms or in simple definition, it is a system assigned managed identity is going to be directly tied to Azure resource. For example, virtual machine, Azure functions, logic apps, right? And then when any resource is created, Azure automatically creates the identity, and that identity, or when the resource is deleted, the identity is also deleted automatically, right? So that's the system assigned identity, right? So this is in short and simple. If someone asks you what is it and how it works, so this is going to be the simple term and definition you can tell about. And let's talk about the key features. So when we create it and uh, once we create it, then it is going to be created and tied up with a resource. And when we delete it, it is going to be deleted at the same time when the resource. The very important part of this is it is carrying one-to-one relationship within Azure and Azure resources to get its own unique identity for different resources, right? So that whatever the identity you are going to create and use it for different resources, it has only one-to-one relationship with them, right? It also does not require manual management of the identity lifecycle. So that's going to be kind of one-time creation and just let it work or let it be there for usage, right? And there are few use cases and few benefits that I'm going to talk. So let's say the use case number one is a single application scenario wherein we wanted to use it with virtual machine where it needs a secure access to Azure Key Vault for retrieving secrets without requiring shared identity across different resources within organization or within Azure. The second is ephemeral workloads where temporary or disposable Azure resources that we are going to create for different scenarios like testing environment or development or maybe kind of just innovation situations where the life cycle of resource matches the identity life cycle, and we really not going to take care of any of those resources later, right? The third use case is going to be assigning the identity directly to this single resource, which ensures the other resources cannot inadvertently access the identity, or maybe there is no direct communication between different identities, different resources, and that is why this identity is going to be the key here to use it, right? Now, there are different scenarios where you might be seeing and end up saying that, okay, this identity, which is system assigned, has only one-to-one relationship. That means we cannot use it with the different resources within Azure. But what if I wanted to use the identity which works with one-to-many or one-to-many relationship or many-to-many relationship, right? So it is also possible with user assigned identity. That's also part of managed identity as I talked, right? And by using that identity, we would be able to use one to many and many to many relationship integrations and connections within Azure services, right? So let's talk about it. And before that, I'll talk few benefits about system assigned identity, which is simplified lifecycle management, which has uh, as soon as we create it and delete any resource wherever it is tied up, it is going to be deleted automatically, and we really don't have to manage it or do any other thing for the same resource, right? It is perfect for the resource that don't share the credentials with other applications or other systems wherever we are going to integrate it. And the third option is, or the benefit is, which reduces the risk for unintended access on the shared credentials, right? So that's also one of the way where we look into where we don't want to share the credentials and we wanted to keep it safe and secret, but from the other identities, right? So those are the three benefits, and there are many more, of course, but I'm just going to, or I'm just letting you know through this video, right? And let's talk about the user-assigned managed identities, right? So what's the user-assigned managed identity? It is the identity which is created as an independent Azure resource, and it is not tied up to a specific Azure resource and can be shared across multiple resources. So if you look into the difference between both, the system assigned is a pure straightforward, and it is a separate identity, and opposite to that is user assigned managed identity, right? It is not tied up to any specific resource. Instead, we can tie this identity with a different and multiple resources within the Azure. There are key features to it, which also includes managed, created, and managed as an independent Azure resource, which can be tied up with the many resources and services within Azure, which can be also assigned to multiple resources to use and uh, integrate with, right? And the identity is also persist even after the resources using it are deleted. That means if I have used this identity with particular resource and that resource was deleted, but this identity is not going to be deleted. Why? Because this is going to be identity which is independent Azure resource and can be integrated with many resources. It does not be affect if we delete the primary resource or wherever it is assigned or used, right? Let's look at some of the use cases where user assigned identity is being used. So it is being used with the multi-resource access. As I said, applications are running across the different virtual machines or application services, which includes the single identity to access multiple common resources such as key vaults, Azure Function, Azure Apps, right? Or maybe Azure Automation, right? So this identity is going to be really be helpful in those scenarios wherein we wanted to use a single identity access to a common resources across the organization, and that can be leveraging this identity to communicate with each other at access levels. The second use case is going to be consistency across the deployments, right? So when we are deploying multiple identical applications across the environment, and using the user assigned managed identity ensures consistent access permissions, right? Which does not impact any other scenarios or does not reflect any issues, right? Because once we know what is expected there, that means we have the appropriate permissions, appropriate records, appropriate configuration setup, then we can go ahead and use it, right? And the third benefit is going to centralize identity management, which is easier for us to manage permissions for multiple resources and configuring them to use the single managed identity, which is going to be very helpful for scenarios where we are going to use common resources, right? So let's look at few of the benefits of it, right? Which is going to be, the first benefit is going to be reusable identity, right? That means wherever we are going to use this managed identity, which is going to be simplifies the overall access management across the multiple resources within the Azure, right? And then identity, which is going to be beyond the life cycle for resource management. That means whatever the resources we are going to create and tied up with this user managed or user assigned identity, it is going to be independent, which is not going to really be deleted or removed, even if the resource is been deleted or removed across, right? It is also easier to integrate with different scenarios and has a consistent identity across multiple different workloads, right? Which is common and wherever we wanted to integrate with. So it saves a lot of time. It saves a lot of different activities that we really don't want to get into the situations where we have to create separate identity and tied up with a different and then leverage those identities for accessing purpose, right? So let's look at few of the key differences, right? And the features of each of those. So let's say first feature, which is going to be tied to resource life cycle, right? Resource life cycle, that means if the resource is deleted, then in system assigned, it is going to be deleted, but in user assigned, it is not going to be deleted. The other include other feature, which is a reuse across different resources. System assigned is not been or is not possible to use. Instead, we need to use user assigned identity, right? Then identity management, which is automatic for Azure handles the life cycle when we create system assigned identity, but for user assigned identity, it is going to be manual, where user manages the life cycle of the user assigned managed identity. Why? Because when we create user assigned identity, that means we have to tie up it with the different resources, but we need to also make sure whether we are going to keep using it for the future resources, future projects, or whatever it is, right? And then we can decide and take the actions either we should keep it or delete it. The next very important feature of this is assignment scopes, which is going to be one-to-one in system assigned management identity scopes, and in user assigned managed identity is going to be one to many or many to one, right? Why? Because the one identity can be tied up with the many resources and can be using it as a common identity for access purpose, right? And the next is persistence after resource deletion. What it means is that when any resource is being deleted, whether that identity remains active or act in the back in the Azure. So in the system assigned managed identity scope, it does not remain there. As soon as any resource that is assigned and tied up with it, it is going to be deleted with. And in the user assigned, it is not. So that means user assigned identity is going to be remain there and it's going to be available for us to use it in future, right? Okay, so there are few more use cases that I would talk a bit about, and then we can jump on to the demo, right? So on the system assigned managed identity, wherein we have different ways to use it with Azure function accessing the keywords. Let's say I have a requirement where I wanted to create a function app which is going to be performing different actions, right? And then there is a step or action where it needs to access a secret, right? But I don't want to use credentials in the step or coding or whatever the action is. Instead, I would be using the system assigned identity and I'll give it appropriate permissions to access those secrets and credentials from the key vault. And it is going to simply be fetching those details and use that in the flow of the Azure function, and it is going to be performing that actions, right? So it removes our dependency there, as well as it also helps us not to expose the credentials openly there, right? Similarly, on the event-driven workloads, where we would be creating Azure logic apps, which is going to access the queues, storage queues during its runtime and can use system assigned identity that is going to clean up when the Azure logic app is being deleted, right? That means this is the one of the scenario where if the logic app is executing some steps and we wanted to delete some of the resources and perform those actions, and even if the resource is deleted, that means system assigned identity is going to be deleted. On the other side, under the user assigned managed identity, where we are going to create virtual machine skill sets, and the user assigned identity can be shared across different instances in skill sets to access the Azure resources across, right? And this identity is going to be used across all those resources wherever we are going to use it in a common scenario or common workloads. On the same side, where we have cross environment access levels, then centralized role management to make sure it is going to simplify our identity management and assigning the roles and permissions and the scope of each of those scenarios, right? So yeah, these are the different use cases and scenarios that I talked about, and there are different use cases definitely which you can go ahead and use it for. And let me share my screen quickly here to show you how we can create that one, and then you will also get an idea about it. All right. All right. So I'm on the Azure portal here, and here you need to search for managed identity. Identity. Perfect. So here's the option, which is managed identity. And currently here you see I don't have any created yet, right? So let's go ahead and click on create button. So it's simply going to load it, and then it is going to show me the steps that I can take to create this managed identity. So under the managed identity, we would be able to create different identities. Different includes user assigned and system assigned, both. But if you look at the system assigned identity, that is going to mostly be tied up with resource directly, right? Because it is in the nature of a resource level and not the kind of common level, right? So let's say I'm creating a resource here, a resource group, and then I'm going to give it a name. Next, so here I can give tags if in case I wanted to, and and the last step, just wait for it to run the validation, which is a final validation, and then hit the create button. So this is going to be created within few seconds or minute max, and it would be created and it is ready to use for us. Perfect. Here you can see it is completed. This is the identity created, and let's go to resource group. Perfect. So here's our managed identity. If I click on this one, and I can go to settings, then I can do other federated credentials and all other setup for this identity, right? So I'll go back from the beginning and then go to here and then go to settings, then resource groups, and then manage identity resource groups. And this is our managed identity, right? So it's created. Here you can see the client ID and other details of it, right? And which is going to be really be used for different scenarios. So from here, we can add additional federated credentials if in case we wanted to use those one. And we can put log and properties on it. And to show you the system identity, let me go back. I believe I have the resource here. So I will go here. Okay, I think it is not tied up with this because this is a different B2C tenant and it does not have that identity or that option. that capability. Let me go back here again, and then external. I think that is not part of this as well, because as soon as we create any of the resource that is going to be tied up with that identity or that resource, here it is going to show as system assigned identity, and then we can enable it and turn it on and off for that particular resource, right? So yeah, that is all I wanted to show you in this video. And definitely I'm going to make another video which is going to be showing up the system as well as managed identity in action together, and which is going to be very helpful to know and see, right? So yeah, that's all for this video. Hope you like it. Please do like, share, and subscribe, and also do watch other videos around Azure Microsoft 365 FinOps. And yeah, that's all. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.